Hey, welcome to another session of weekly reading, discussion, coding, everything. So, this session would be dedicated to various things. First, we will take two code examples which we left the previous time, and secondly, our discussion would be focused on newer topics, some newer fascinating topics like how to deal with large CSV files, how to sample, how to do cosine annealing, if and various things as we come across and as the time permits, as per the time limitations. So let's begin. Let's dive in. So our first topic of the day is how do you deal with the large CSV file, and then we'll shift towards how do you do random sampling. All right. So let us begin. So working with large CSV files in Python. So yeah. So what we do is what we always do is pandas.read CSV, and you pass on the CSV file, and it works smoothly and fine. But what if the CSV file is huge and the RAM is not sufficient? RAM memory is not sufficient in that scenario, in that case. This is what we need to do. So let us dive in. What is needed to be done is, alright. So first method which is being proposed over here is, so data plays a key role in this. This importing, directly importing these out of memory. So what we do is, one way to process large files is to read the entire chunks, entries in chunks of reasonable size which are read into the memory and are processed before reading the next chunk. We can use the chunk size parameter to specify the size of the chunk, and this function returns an iterator which is used to iterate through these chunks and then process them. Alright, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. Alright, so first method is you can read through chunks, and when it happens, right, you need the next first chunk is read in the memory, and the next chunk is not. So chunk wise processing happens in an iterative manner. This is what this particular method proposes. Alright, you need to specify the chunk size. Next method which is being proposed is Dask. Dask is an open source Python library which you might have already heard. And this method is using Dask. You're able to read with the help of Dask. So Dask is preferred over chunking as it uses multiple CPU cores or clusters of machines. Apart from it, it also provides skilled NumPy, Pandas, scikit-learn libraries to exploit parallelism. This was a brief overview of how you can deal with large CSV files. So till now, what has been added to our knowledge base is, if we are to deal with large CSV files, we can use chunk size parameter of pandas, or we can use Dask for our convenience. Right now, let's move on to the second article. The second article is a Stack Overflow thing, and let's see what it says. So I'm trying to read a large CSV file, approximately 6 gigs in pandas. I'm getting a memory error. What should I do? So the error shows that the machine does not have enough memory to read the entire CSV into the data frame at one time, assuming that you don't need the entire data set in memory all at one time. One way to avoid the problem would be to process the CSV in chunks, and that is something we already did. Apart from it, what we can do is, chunking should not always be the first port of call for this problem. Is the file large due to the repeated non-numeric data on unwanted columns? If so, you can see massive savings by reading the columns as categories and selecting required columns via pandas.read. Obviously, this is the smartest approach. I mean, first we need to figure out which columns you actually need. If there are unnecessary columns, why to take them into consideration, and just simply drop them off from consideration. And reading the columns as categories might also help. Does your workflow require slicing and manipulating and exporting? In that case, you can use Dask.dataframe to slice, perform your calculation, and export iteratively. Chunking is performed silently by Dask, so which is also supports the subset of Pandas API. If all else fails, read line by line via chunks. So it says that chunking should be the last option, last resort. Now let us talk about another answer which is also using that Dask. As you can see, what this particular thing proposes is also proposes chunks The above answer is already satisfying the topic, or anyway, if you need all the data in the memory, have a look at BCOLZ. It compresses the data in memory and has a good experience. This another chunking example. What we have over here. All right, this is what I was looking for. This is what I was looking for. So specifying the data types also improvises memory utilization and consumption. So if you specify in a very defined and precise manner what the data type should be for each column variable, then that would result in a huge memory savings. So retypes is a very powerful parameter that you can use to reduce the memory pressure of the read method, right? So referring to the data structures, every data stored, a memory allocation takes place. And at a basic level, refer to the values below. So this is the maximum value of this, right? Now let's say you have an array of digits. You can both theoretically and practically assign, say, an array of 16-bit integer type, but you would then allocate more memory than you actually need to store the array, right? Obviously. So to prevent this, you can set the D type on the read CSV, and you don't want to store the array items as long integer, because you can because 8-bit integer would work well rather than using a 16-bit integer. So you're wasting a lot of memory space. So that is the idea. Rather than just redefine the data types, and that would do a lot of savings. Second method we already did is the chunks. Third method we already did is your task. Fourth method is quite interesting, is consider increasing your RAM and consider working with data on the cloud platform, and this is what it is. Let's see what this particular answer has. So function read CSV read table is almost the same, but you must assign the delimiter this when you use the read table function, right? So reader is this chunks method. Perfect. And hey, this method is also similar. Chunks. Nrows is kind of similar to chunks, but not exactly. So nrows is you're just defining that give me a sample of 1000 rows. So that might not be a good representative. If your 1000 rows are a good representative of the entire data set, then it's a good way to proceed. Else, do not go over this particular method. Now let's read what is given in this particular article by DataQuest. What happened? Alright, using pandas with large data sets in Python. So working with baseball game logs, this is this. Original data was in 127 separate series, but we have used the master files available over here. Alright, how much it is? This is the data they are talking about, how huge it is. 129 MBs of data, which is quite large for a CSV file. So let us see how it goes. You read the pandas this, you summarize the important files. So 860 MBs are being utilized, right? Internal representation of the data frame is integer block is this, object block is this, and float block is this. I think this is what they are trying to do to the numeric conversion of the subtypes of the columns, right? This is what we already read. Now comparing to this storage. Yup, they're converting the data types to reduce the memory. Yep, this was what it was. This was basically a huge role is played by bad allocation of the data types for each column. So first task would be to use that. Second would be reduce the columns which you don't know. Third would be to chunk. Fourth would be to use task. That is what the summary is. Now let's read the last article of this particular series. So if there are efficient ways of importing CSV, first is pandas.read CSV, or other is chunk size, and third is task frame. I think that's what the article is all about. We might not need to go through the entire article, and this is what it is. Yep. Now what this article is, how to handle large data sets with the help of Python and pandas. I hope this is also quite similar. Here's the thing, data set is 1.4 gigs. What do we do? You are using pandas and you are using task. I don't think there's much new over here. Let's read what is over here. How to read a small random subsample. So here we are talking about sampling. Right? Here we are talking about sampling. This is an interesting topic, and here we'll learn about how to do sampling. So first part is, why don't you do a sampling? And so this is talking about how many samples you require. I require 1000 out of the total number of records. I require a sample of 10,000. Right? Well, I have about 1 lakh rows, and out of which I require 10,000. 100,000. I have 100,000 over here, not 100,000 exactly. I have 1 million. I have 1 million rows over here, out of which I require 10,000 as a sample size. So what you do is you skip this and you do a random sampling. You do a random sampling, and yeah, so you skip and you do a random sampling. Then we proceed over here, we proceed to which, so basically you're trying to specify which rows you want to skip, and the ones you want to skip are these many, and out of those, the remaining would be our data frame. Cool. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now let us see another method. This is the percentage method. So what you do is specify a percentage, like only keep the 1% of the lines. So what you do is define a function over here, lambda I greater than 0, and random percentage. Oh, perfect. Read every nth line. This is what you do. Reservoir sampling is something quite interesting. I would ask you to go through it, and we will discuss it in the next session. What is reservoir sampling, because it is a topic in itself. Reservoir sampling. Alright. Now this is not in pandas, but it achieves the same result. So this is a command line function. Shuffle and place it over somewhere else. Nice. Alright, perfect, perfect, perfect. Where are we proceeding? Have following code, reads the first header, then sample, random sample of the other lines. And here we are. Here we are. You can use subsample, get bash. I think more or less the examples are quite repetitive in nature. Or you can use the sample method over here as it says. Alright, perfect. So here is also the three methods. You can use sampling, chunking, pandas, t-types, and parallelism with tasks. So these are the methods to deal with large data set, which we have already covered. So that's what it is. Now let's move on to our next topic. Our next topic would be reading a code example, which is quite interesting, and I found it on internet. So we'll be discussing that. Our next topic is taxi fare prediction with the help of Keras Deep Learning. This is a wonderful notebook which I found on internet, and I would like to discuss with you. So what it particular does, is, so we will discuss and learn what it does. So basically how you can, main purpose of discussing this particular notebook is how beautifully feature engineering is performed. And the more you delve into machine learning and things, you will observe and learn, the more skilled you are at feature engineering, the better machine learning, deep learning, or any kind of engineer you are. So the art of feature engineering is what defines the maturity and the skills at any particular domain, be it deep learning, be it machine learning, be it computer vision, be it anything. So the more feature engineering and complex and beautiful and relevant feature engineering. What is feature engineering? Feature engineering is basically the features which are already present, and using those features, you extract out meaningful features. Now, how to do it? There's no predefined step. How you can do feature engineering? There's no predefined step. So how people usually do, first is the more notebooks you read, the more, with the passage of time, that's the obvious way, that's the obvious answer, that with the passage of time you get experienced, skilled with the different things and techniques. But actually what happens is, like, you put in your domain knowledge. This is my domain knowledge. You put in that. You can take your, what do you say, you can take the help of different other people's work, and using that as a base you can perform your feature engineering. And feature engineering are custom features which you think would be explicitly beneficial for the dataset which you have on hand. So that is what feature engineering is all about. And let's discuss. Yeah. So this is what this notebook is all about. We have taxi fare prediction. The first part, the first section, as it always is the import section. And we can have an overview of what the notebook is all about. So we have the NumPy, pandas, datetime, pyplot, pre-processing, model selection, train test split. All right. Some model making is happening. A callback has been used, and other things, optimizes, regularizes. All right. So first section of the notebook is all about data cleaning. Here I am removing some outliers and noisy data. So latitudes and longitudes that do not belong to New York. Negative fare, obviously, that is basically fare cannot be negative. So what it might be the case of what do you say, an error in the data creation. That might be the case of an error getting into the database. Apart from it, we have fare which is greater than 250. So that is an outlier you would rather not take into consideration while making your model. And the writes that begin and end in the same location, obviously. So that must have been the cancelled write or something else, or either it might have been a cancelled write, or it might be the case of the end location not being logged into the database. So either of the two, those are the outliers. So how beautifully, this is a feature engineering. This is putting your domain knowledge, common sense, brainstorming into action. So this is what he did. So implemented the first point. If the pickup latitude or longitude is between -76 to -72, then keep those, right? Apart from it, so it is for pickup latitude 38 to 42. Fare amount should be between 0 to 250, and remove the ones where the drop off and the pickup values are same. Perfect. This is the cleaning or the initial feature engineering. So this notebook is the beauty of this particular notebook is all about feature engineering. Now let us talk about some more advanced feature engineering, right? So what did I say? Now I'll do some more feature engineering and pre-process the data. I'm basically creating three kinds of features. First is time features, second is coordinate features, and the third is the distance feature. First being the time feature. Here we have year, month, day, hour, weekday. Second is the night, third is the late night. So in the first we have year, month, day, hour, weekday. Right. Let's see how it is being implemented. Okay, so you check whether or not it is late night. So to do that, you check that the hours are less than equal to 6 or greater than equal to 20. So after 8 p.m., or before 6 a.m., those are late night hours. Night hours are from 6 p.m. Okay, night hours are your 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Those are your night hours, and the weekday is, and should be a weekday. Then night hours should be considered. This is a Manhattan application being applied, and you will see how many feature modifications have been performed over here. So you can see pickup date time. First you convert it to datetime format, then you extracted the year, month, day, hour, weekday. So using one feature which was there, pickup date time, he made 5 different features. He extracted out the year, he extracted out the month, he extracted out the day, the hour, and the weekday. Apart from it, he made it a string, the pickup date time, and after making it a string, what he do is he applied this particular thing, night function. So how does the night function operate? It takes in consideration the hour and the weekday. Perfect. So night function, night value were obtained as well as the late night. Perfect. And now you removed the date time. So you basically pick up date time feature which was already there. We do not have an overview of the dataset, never mind. So there must have been a feature which is pick up date time, and this feature, which was not at all relevant or did not deliver such a great amount of information, was not delivering any information, that was converted to such an informative feature set. So that is the beauty of feature engineering, and that beauty to exploit the art of exploiting a feature and making different features is known as the feature engineering. This is extremely beautiful, feature engineering. Let's talk about this. What is it? Add coordinate. So you're adding a coordinate feature. All right. These are two new features: latitude difference and longitude difference. Now you're adding add distance features. All right. Now you're adding Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance, downtown pickup distance, downtown drop off distance, JFK pickup distance, JFK. So you are doing it relative. All right. So add distances from the airport and the downtown. So that is what another kind of feature engineering, how far it is from the airport, how far it is from the downtown. That is what it has been done over here. Now we have auxiliary or utility functions. Apart from it, nothing much. Basically this is for size reduction, as we recently talked about, and we are ready to go after dropping the unwanted columns and taking the wanted columns. Then train, test, split, min max scalar, transformers, define the model, and after defining the model you can train the model.fit. That is what is being done over here. After doing the model.fit, you can plot the accuracy. After plotting the accuracy, you can predict the model. You can obtain the model predictions, and obtaining the predictions, you are good to go and submit the model. So the last part of the notebook is something which was quite obvious, but what the beauty of the notebook lied in the feature engineering section. Feature engineering is not a way-defined path, but it gradually grows with the number of examples and notebooks you do, and is quite interesting. You can put in your domain knowledge, you can put in your logic, you can put your common sense, you can put in observations, anything that might improve, or you can convert. The beauty is like pickup date time was bogus, was not delivering any great importance in the dataset. However, that feature was converted into something which was of great value, into many features of which were of great value. So that is the beauty. So was the case with pickup latitude, longitude, and these many things. Those were converted into difference, and difference from the airport, downtown. So a coordinate is not useful, but a distance from the nearest landmarks and those things, because an airport is expected to be a good landmark. So is the case of downtown. So these are the logic and the common sense which are not predefined, but you need to think and explore. Search about it, read different notebooks. So that is all about it. I think you liked this notebooks as I did, and you got to learn and read about feature engineering. This is beautiful. One is data processing. That is a thing that is mandatory. So scaling and normalizing the data, scaling of the data, normalization of the data, that is something you need to do, right? That is inevitable. But what is something that you need to do, you can do and add your own creativity, is with the help of feature engineering. That's what this notebook is all about. Let us begin with let us continue our discussion with sampling techniques, different sampling techniques and their implementation. So how actually they are implemented. We already know about sampling techniques. There are various sampling techniques, how they are utilized, how they are implemented, but let us learn and understand about the different sampling techniques and their implementation. So this is my first pick for the notebook. This would be sampling techniques for imbalanced dataset, and the other one is this stratified sampling for regression. These are quite interesting notebooks which I would love to discuss with you. So let us begin one by one. Initially what we have is the import section, then we do another import section. We proceed to get our dataset. Once our dataset is obtained, we see that the class distribution is highly imbalanced. Alright, and we try it, even if this is not understandable or comprehensible, or if the disparity is not understandable, what we do is extend it. We extend it with the help of a visualization diagram, wherein you can see that the class 0 is such a huge bar plot, whereas class 1 is quite negligible. So these are the different columns we have. We have time column, V1 to V28, amount column, and the class column. So this is a classification problem for fraudulent or not fraudulent for a credit card transactions. For the credit card transactions, you want to automate the process. You want to automate the classification for your credit card transactions and make a model, build a model that would automatically classify whether or not this particular transaction is fraudulent or not, right? So these particular set of columns are set to be principal components. So there's nothing much we can do with these columns. Now the column time is time elapsed between each transaction. Is this really an important field for us? No. It really will not have any significance in detecting whether a transaction is fraudulent or genuine. So let's drop this column. The amount column is necessary, so we shall standardize the amount data. Since all other columns have been obtained through PCA, and PCA will always work on standardized data. So you are standardizing the amount column. Once you have obtained the amount column, you will drop the time and amount. This is the ultimate dataset you have. Now you're splitting the dataset into X and Y, where X is the independent and Y is the dependent. You're trying to do train test split and obtained X train, Y test, X test. Now there are three methods which are majorly used to resolve the imbalanced dataset issue, which is undersampling, oversampling, and SMART. SMART is quite popular, so are these. However, SMART is heavily used. Now let us talk about undersampling, oversampling, and SMART one by one. What is undersampling? So this is your minority dataset class. This is the amount of samples which the majority class has. This is the amount of samples the minority class has. So undersampling means you reduce the sample so that the majority and majority are in 1:1 ratio. This is the undersampling method. So what you would do is count the number of instances the minority class has, count the number of instances, get the indices for the select random indices for the majority class which are equal to the number of minority classes. So let's say there are 100 of minority class and 600 for majority. Select random 100 indices from 600 indices and pick those out and make a new data frame, make a new data set with the 100 of the original minority and the 100 which was sampled out, undersampled from the majority class, and make a new data set. That would be a 1:1 ratio. That is what it has been done over here. After you are doing this, you are doing a train test split, and then you are doing a logistic regression fit. Once you do it, you can observe that the accuracy was 92 and the recall score was 96, which is a great number. The inherent disadvantage with undersampling is you might lose a great amount of valuable information which you might not or should not have dropped. So this is an inherent disadvantage which is there and is associated with undersampling techniques. Apart from it, let's proceed to oversampling. Oversampling is you have small minority samples, you have majority samples, so you do a multiplicative effort wherein the minority and the majority are equal in number and they balance. But this also comes with an inherent disadvantage, which is the majority class. The majority class is now equalized with the minority class. However, the minority class is not a real dataset, it is a multiplicative dataset and might lead to overfitting. Right? It might lead to overfitting. So what do? We do this code is quite interesting. So you extract out the fraudulent samples from the data and you sample by specifying the number of samples to be taken are equal to the majority class with the parameter replace equal to, which is quite mandatory, right? So this is the data. You say give me a sample this large. How will you do that? By replacing equal to 2. And you concatenate the two, the fraudulent and non-fraudulent, the minority, the new minority, the new minority, the original majority, concatenate the two. This is your ultimate data set. Once you do that, you can train a model fit over here, you can train a model fit over here, you can see the accuracy scored very high, however recall is a bit low. This is due to overfitting effect. Now let's talk about synthetic minority oversampling technique, which is already implemented in IMB Learn. This is quite interesting. So what you do is take the training data and split it into X-train, Y-train, XOL, YY, and apply SMART technique. So once you apply SMART technique, you do not apply SMART to the test data. Rather, you are applying SMART to the train data. So you're applying SMART to the trained data, you're doing logistic regression, you're achieving a recall score of 5%, accuracy score of 97%. Similar is the score for test data, and you can conclude that that the model is good with the help of SMART. Now you use a different algorithm, that is random forest classifier, scores improve 99 and 83. So is the case with test 99 and 83, and you say that the models are predicting much better with the accuracy of 85% on the test data, and the recall on unseen data set, it is close to the recall on the trained data set, and this would say that the model is performing well. Nice and interesting. Let's proceed to another notebook. What we have over here is stratified sampling for regression. Background. As you know that the non-zero value is very few in target in competition. It is like imbalance of target in the classification. For sampling, for solving the imbalance in classification, we commonly use stratified sampling. For this competition, we can simply apply stratified sampling to get more well-distributed sampling for the continuous target. And to compare the effect of this strategy, I forked this particular notebook with the help of some parameters, some random seeds. I changed the sampling strategy. Let's see how it works. This particular section is all about the imports. Let's proceed. This is all about reading the data frame. Once you've read the data frame, this is a feature engineering which is being performed. So you're taking the date, you're making a string type. Once you're making a string type, you're starting out date, making it a date time. Once it is a date time, you extract the year, you extract month, you extract day, you extract weekday, you extract week of year, you extract number of unique user counts. This is all about feature engineering, similar to the one we had discussed few minutes before. Now what we see over here is another kind of feature engineering, all feature engineering. So I'm not getting into the feature engineering because this is extensive feature engineering and that would make us run short of time. Let us proceed to the main part, and the main part of the data set is this stratified sampling, which I am interested to discuss. So let's talk about stratified sampling. Before stratified sampling, we need to pseudo label for continuous target. So get the model selection, from model selection get the stratified sampling, get your model light GBM. So what you're trying to do is log 1p to the target, second is exam p1 to predictions, sum predictions, log 1p to the sum. Whatever it is, we have this, then you bin the targets. First you obtain the y log, then you bin the targets. After that you have stratified k-folds. Using the k-fold strategy, you're training the LGB model. Using the fold split, you're obtaining the indices. Once the indices and the labels are obtained, you have your training data, you have your validation data. Once you have those, you're training the model. You're training the model, you're obtaining the feature importances, the folds, everything. You're saving that in a data frame, and this is what is obtained. So conclusion is improvement seems small, but you know the small result can change the medal winner, and the strategy would be improved using one more category. How about using it? So this is nice. This is basically what we learned about it. I would ask you to go through the feature engineering. Extensive feature engineering has been performed over here. What we see over here is something different. So the target has been processed in a very unique manner, that is the 1p log 1p transformation, then exempt 1p1 transformation to the predictions, then summing the predictions, then again log 1p to the sum. So this is quite interesting. So once you do that, then you do the stratified k-fold. Once you do the stratified k-fold, you are getting the train data, the validation data, then you are, for every fold you are training a LGB model, and after training the LGB model you are obtaining the plots, the predictions, then you see the feature importances. Once you obtain the feature importances, you are obtaining the ultimate predictions. Once you have ultimate predictions, you are submitting the results, and that's it. That's this notebook about. So what we learned about sampling is quite interesting. We learned about 3 major techniques: undersampling, oversampling, and SMART. What is stratified sampling? So what is stratified sampling? Stratified sampling is basically class 1. So let's say there are 100 samples, out of which first 25 were class 1, next 25 were 0 to 25, 1 to 25 was class 1, 26 to 50 was class 2, 51 to 75 was class 3, and 76 to 100 was class 4. In such a case, what we do is take the class 1. If you are doing train test split, right, without shuffling, what would happen? Train test split without shuffling, 75% split, you would be missing out entirely on class 4. Your dataset, train dataset would have class 1, class 2, class 3, would not have class 4. So you not have any data which is a representative of class 4, and your model is perfectly trained and performs well on the training data, which is comprising of the class 1, class 2, and class 3. Now on such a data it would perform good. However, the test data on which you are validating has entirely the class 4 data. So how do you expect the model to perform good on class 4 data? And such an indicator, or the training score, validation score, would be a faulty metric. So what we do in such cases is we prefer stratified k-fold, which would take equal or proportionate samples from each class distribution, so as to maintain the class distribution. That is what this notebook is about. I hope we learned a lot in this particular notebook. Let's proceed to something new. This would be our last topic of the day. We'll be learning about dbert and PyTorch, and this is for this particular competition, which is Common Readability. The notebook is written by Charlie Crane. Let's see what the notebook is all about. Let's have a quick overview. I read some papers on SOTA and found that dbert did amazingly well. I wanted to give a vanilla version of it try. This is an inference notebook for you to run without the internet. So this is the training notebook. So over here you can see the lot of imports happening. Over here you can see the dbert getting installed, and after dbert is getting installed, you are loading the vocabularies and loading the tokenizer. Once the tokenizer and the vocabulary has been loaded, you are obtaining the training data and the testing data. Once both of the steps are performed, you are checking for any null value if present. If there is any null value present, there isn't any null value present. So the next step which is being performed over here is remove any new line character or any white spaces. So if there is any new line character, that is being replaced. If there is any white space, that is also being replaced. Apart from it, a maximum words has been obtained for any sentence. This particular code cell performs folds, which is k-fold or the stratified k-fold. This is slightly interesting. So you are allocating folds to every sample, and the number of splits are 5. So the samples would have folds from 0 to 4. So it would be folds, either sample would belong to 4, either basically the sample would belong to sample fold 0, fold 1, fold 2, fold 3, or fold 4. These are the 5 possibilities where the sample can belong to. Now here we are defining the parameters, and here you are defining the loss function. This particular code section is PyTorch lightning module. You are basically you're defining the model with the help of PyTorch lightning module. You are initializing the model, you are initializing the dropout layer, you are initializing the fully connected layer, performing the forward, defining the optimizers, the loss function, and the training step, and the validation step. This is quite interesting and based on PyTorch lightning. I don't know much about PyTorch lightning, but what seems to me is this is usually the structure for any model to be defined. You define the initializer, you define the forward, you define the configure optimizers, you define the loss step. This has to be defined, the training step. This also has to be defined, the validation step. So this is there for PyTorch Lightning. What happens over here is you're defining how the dataset is to be parsed and processed. So it is over here, the dataset is being inherited from PyTorch. So from torch.nn.utils dataset, you're inheriting and defining your particular use case dataset. What is the length of the dataset and how each item would be parsed. So for every item, you would return the input IDs, the token IDs, and the attention mask, the text, the labels, and the inputs which are being tokenized over here. And after that, you obtain the input IDs, the token type IDs, and the attention mask. Now let's see what trainer is. Within the trainer, since it is a k-fold training, so for every fold you're obtaining the training data as the ones which are not of that particular fold. If it is a fold 0, then you would expect fold 1, fold 2, fold 3, fold 4 to be there in the training data frame. And if it is a fold 0, the validation data frame should have fold 0. If it is fold 1, the training data frame would have fold 1, anything apart from fold 1, which is fold 0, 2, 3, 4, and the validation would have fold 1. Once it is done, you are obtaining the training dataset based on these data frames. So is the case with the validation dataset. Once the dataset is obtained, you are obtaining the data loader, you are obtaining the BERT model. With the help of PyTorch Lightning, you are defining the trainer. Trainer is fitting the model and saving the checkpoints. That is a good start, very beautifully written, and in a very in the most concise manner, as concise as possible. That's what it is. Alright, let's wrap up the session over here. In today's session, we learned many things. We started off with large CSV files. So how large CSV files can be troublesome, might be a headache for you, but how do you deal with large CSV files? You start off with chunking. We started off with chunking, then we learned about, alright, we can sample, but the sample should be a good representative. So the best way out was to reduce the data types. If it is a integer 8, why do you define integer 32 or integer 16? Necessary type allocation would reduce a lot of memory. Or you can use Dask or a appropriate sampling method, which is a good representative of the entire population. Apart from it, we learned various techniques for sampling. We learned about undersampling, oversampling, SMART. We learned about stratified sampling. Then we proceeded to something like taxi fare prediction by Dimitri Oliveira. This particular notebook was beautiful, and the purpose of the notebook was to discuss feature engineering, how feature engineering plays such a crucial role in your model definition and in your modeling part. So feature engineering is an art, and you're the artist, wherein you're the artist, and your logics, your domain knowledge, your understanding, your experience, everything counts into and shapes up your feature engineering skills. This cannot be learned, but this can be grown and developed with the passage of time. The more you do, the better you get at it. And lastly, we covered off a session with the help of dbird and PyTorch for the Commonwealth Readability competition. This was an amazing notebook. Alright, that was it for today's session. Alright, take care, bye bye, and do hit the like, share and subscribe button. That would help me out. Really, it would help me out. Alright, take care, bye bye. Have a great day.